Okay, this is going to be two terms that are very similar, but you need to know the differences of them. So focus. We have one, the Emancipation Proclamation, and two, we have the 13th Amendment. So you need to know both. They're a little similar, but they're also a little different. So let's talk about the little differences here. So the first one that comes by is the Emancipation Proclamation, and this is a proclamation that you will find in wartime. Lincoln does this basically as a wartime measure. You can see it as a civil rights type of thing. You can see it as a good thing, cause for freedom of slaves. I'm with you there, but the objective was using it for the military. And what you can see here, the red line, all those states below that, those represent the Confederacy. The Emancipation Proclamation freed slaves there. It only freed slaves of any state that was fighting the Union. It did not free slaves for everyone in the United States, for every territory or every state in the United States. It just freed slaves in the Confederacy. Keep that in mind. So that's what it did. The 13th Amendment is different. So we have 27 amendments, okay? Think of them as like the big boy laws, okay? These are the things that are guaranteed, have to be protected by the federal government, can't stop them. Now you can be regulated, but you can't get rid of them because they are protected by the federal government. The 13th Amendment is that. 13th Amendment states that all slaves in all of the United States will go free. So the difference between the two, Emancipation Proclamation only frees slaves in the Confederacy. 13th Amendment frees slaves on a federal level. Federal meaning everywhere in the United States. Know those two terms because, man, you're going to see them a lot. The 54th Massachusetts, the first all-black regiment. This is the first regiment that is comprised of all black, just citizens, free black men, and also former slave black men. Most of them were free. But the first one, now understand, let's go take a step back. Abraham Lincoln actually didn't allow for a black force to actually get armed and send them out in the field until 1863. Now, it's not just him that made the decision, but his military commander says, oh, that's going to be rough. We shouldn't do that. Matter of fact, you're going to see this push to not put African-American soldiers on the battlefield all the way up through the World War II. And there's a whole bunch of different arguments for why they did this, and none of them are actually great. So here's the deal. The 54th showed valor, strength. They showed just the character that we want on the battlefield. They showed, even though they weren't getting paid the same, even though they weren't treated the same, they showed they had the same blood running through their veins, and that was American blood. That was fighting for the Union, fighting for the cause of freedom. So, let's talk about him. First, Robert Shaw. He was the commander. He was a mama's boy, which is okay to be a mama's boy. I mean, especially when your mama is an abolitionist and basically teaches you that people should be free. Go mama. So, he's a mama's boy. He has his abolitionist views. People should be free. There should be no slavery. That's his views. So, he's like the perfect candidate to lead this first all-black regiment. He does it well. First, you have to understand something. The men of the 54th were not treated equally by the military. They were not paid the same. Some of them didn't even have shoes. They were never put into battle until a very long time after they got enlisted. They actually sat in the worst territory of the South for 2 months. They were getting bit by rattlesnakes. They were getting poisoned by the plants around them. They were going through some stuff. So they weren't treated the same. But when they started fighting, and when they fought without the same pay, or without the same material, or the same respect, they showed they got exactly the same courage as somebody else with a different skin color. So their first battle against the Confederacy, they knocked them out. They just, it's done, man. They took them out. Second thing they did is they saved the 10th Regiment, a all-white regiment, from being annihilated by the Confederacy. So go them. They went in there and saved everybody. Then the biggest challenge. There's a fort in South Carolina. Fort Wagner has been attacked by Union forces. but they can't take it. The Confederacy is really locked in. They got it locked up. Everybody that's gone to try to attack this fort has either retreated or has died. But Shaw takes the 54th. Say, we're going to do this, boys. And they went out there and they fought. They fought an uphill, literal uphill battle. But it wasn't enough. 40% of the 54th killed. Robert Shaw killed. And when the Confederacy sees that it's an African American group of men who attacked them, they dig a mass grave. They take Shaw, their white commander, strip him naked, throw him at the bottom of the grave, and throw all of his men on top of him, and just cover it up. Now, there is one thing that came out of this. One, it shows, actually two things came out of it. One, it shows those men, they didn't matter their skin color. They went on the line of fire. They did what they could for their military, for the people they were fighting for, gave their lives for it. And two, the first African American male to receive the Medal of Honor comes out of this battle. A man by the name of William Kearny. William Kearny was shot 3 times during the battle, and William Kearny still held the flag of the 54th up high, never touched the ground. With 3 bullet holes in him, he crawls his way to the back of the Union line. That flag never touches the ground. A symbol that the 54th will live on. That the 54th will live on not only to fight more another day, but also will live on in the history textbooks of our nation. If you ever want to watch a movie about the 54th, I suggest right now you try to YouTube, you try to go to Netflix, and maybe on Netflix, I don't know, the movie Glory. The movie Glory is a story of the 54th, and it is a great movie. We don't have time to watch it in class, but if you have time, watch it. Election of 1864, President Lincoln running for re-election, and everyone's like, oh man, he's got it in the bag, right? Because he won a second term, right? So this should be easy, right? No, it's not even close to being easy. So keep in context. There has not been a second-term president up to Lincoln for 30 years prior to that. The last 2-term president was Andrew Jackson. That is 30 years of presidencies where they only serve 1 term. So him to get a second term would be, the opposite of what history says. 2, he was not a popular person at all. So the reason why he was not a popular person is because the war's been going on. Hundreds of thousands of people are dead. Hundreds of thousands. He also instituted a draft. That made people upset. He also did the whole Emancipation Proclamation, which made some people really excited, and then other people like, are you kidding me, man? He got rid of habeas corpus, which we'll get to that later when we talk about the judicial system. He did all these different things that made people not like him very much. So how does he win? Well, if you have the other party kind of messed up, you're going to win. So here's what happened. You have the Democratic Party, which is basically a split platform. You have the peaceful Democrats who want this thing to end, and you have the war Democrats. They want this thing to keep going to the bloody end. And not only that, you have a third party that would have split the votes away from Abraham Lincoln, but ends up giving their support to Lincoln and drops out of the race, giving him more votes. But more important than that, Lincoln's rival, Lincoln's opponent, George McClellan, was a military man. He was a war guy. But the thing is, he was a war guy running on a peace platform. That's like going, man, I really like the color blue, man. Blue is so great. Blue is the greatest, but I'm going to use green. You're saying you're one thing, but we know you're the other. And this makes people think that you're not actually being truthful. They think that you're flip-flopping. They think that they can't trust you when you get in there, man, because you just get like, oh, I'm going to be this person now. So he ran on a platform that wasn't him. Because he got the support from a third-party candidate, Abraham Lincoln, and because his opponent was basically, his message was split in 2, he ended up sealing the deal and ends up winning the election. Barely. But he becomes president for a second term. He doesn't live out the second term because, as we're going to find out later on, something happens to him. And we'll talk about that later. Oh boy, Total War! Total War is what we're going to talk about now. But to talk about Total War, we got to talk about Sherman's march to the sea. So he's in Georgia. Well, I can't see the map too well, but this is my square representation of Georgia. And he starts in Atlanta. He actually burns Atlanta to the ground. And he gets us all the way to Savannah. Eventually, he's going to go north into the Carolinas, and he's going to keep his burning going. So here we go. What is total war? Warfare, normally speaking, generally speaking, is kind of like a dance back then. Like just back and forth, back and forth. There's honor to it. There's respect to it. It's not about killing all your enemy. It's not a war of attrition necessarily. It's about just being the victor on that battlefield. I'm like, Mr. Snow, there's like 100,000 people dead plus in this war. What are you talking about? It's like a dance. What I'm saying is it's not about destroying communities. It's not about destroying farms or cities or plantations or whatever. It's about destroying your enemy with the guns in front of you. That's what the war was there. Total war is we're taking it all out. We're taking out the military. We're going to take out their land. We're going to take out their farms. We're going to take out their businesses. We're going to take out their crops. We're going to take out every single thing they own. And the reason why Sherman wants to do this, he wants to break the spirit of the South. So here's what he does. He takes his men from Atlanta to Savannah, and they split up into two armies. And along the way, they didn't bring food with them. They didn't bring supplies with them, because what they're going to do is they're going to steal every single supply they can from all the land that they're traveling from. Every farm they stop at, there goes their cows and their pigs. Every farm they stop at, there goes their wheat and their barley. And anything that's left over, it's probably going to get burned to the ground or destroyed. There's a couple bad things about this. As the army's going through, there's these people called bummers. Like, man, that's a bummer. A bummer is a person who decided to leave an army. It could be the Union Army, it could be the Confederate Army. What they're doing is they're following Sherman's army as they're marching to Savannah. And when they stop at a farm, they stop in a city, and they destroy and steal stuff, they come up behind them like vultures, and they steal stuff too. Well, Sherman doesn't really mind so much, because he's like, they're destroying stuff too. That's exactly what I want them to do, because it's going to strike fear. It's going to strike anger. It's going to strike, we need to get back home to the soldiers that are fighting our boys across there. He's trying to get people that are fighting the Confederacy to be so afraid that their family is going to be attacked, that they will drop what they're doing at whatever battle they're at, come back home, which makes it easier for them to win the war. So, let's get into what he's doing here. First of all, he's destroying their logistics. We talked about logistics before. Logistics, getting bullets and beans to the front lines. The Confederacy didn't have a lot of trains anyway, or railroads. But what Sherman's doing is they pry up the railroads, they heat the metal, and then they bend the metal around trees. So basically they can't be used again. And what they call them is Sherman neckties. And you have Sherman neckties all over the countryside. Wherever there was a railroad they passed, they turned it into a Sherman necktie across a tree. This is trying to destroy their ability to transfer troops, munitions, food, or any other resource that they need to the war effort. He's trying to strike that fear. Total war. Let's do this. So eventually he gets, he doesn't really have to fight that many people, by the way. There's not a lot of forces down in the South. There's about a little over 10,000 that he'll end up fighting. There's actually the majority of them are actually going to be in Savannah. But there's not that many people in the South. Now you might be going, Mr. Snow, does he free slaves along the way? Yeah, kind of, sort of. Not really his objective. He's not a person that cares about slaves. He's not doing this for slaves. As a matter of fact, there's a horrible incident where his men build basically a pontoon bridge, like a bridge across a waterway. And once Sherman's men cross the bridge, Sherman orders that the bridge be destroyed. And the African American slaves that were following them, the ones that left their plantations or whatever, they were following the group for protection, they're on the other side of that river. And they see the bridge coming down, and they start trying to get across the water just by swimming, and a bunch of them drown. Sherman, he's like, it is what it is. I don't care. Because he has a mission. His mission is, I'm going to strike fear in the South. I'm going to end this war. And the reason why he hates the South is because they know he blames them for starting this whole thing. Remember, South Carolina fired the first shot. So he's upset they're doing all this. Eventually, he goes and he takes care of the Capitol building and capital city of Georgia. He goes to a place called McAllister, which, by the way, McAllister's battle, it's a town. They don't really know the specifics. But this battle, they used landmines. The way they had landmines back there, think of it like a ball with a bunch of gunpowder in it. And on the top of the ball, there's a flat metal disc like this. And they put this under wooden steps. So when you step down on the metal thing here, the pressure will cause a spark, and it's going to ignite all that gunpowder in the ball and explodes. But anyway, this battle only takes 15 minutes. He wins. Then he gets to Savannah. He faces 10,000 people, and he wins that eventually. He's actually pretty decent to the people of Savannah, but the problem actually comes later when he gets to the Carolinas. He goes to Columbia, and his men were not allowed to eat for 24 hours, basically because they had to march for a long period of time. And when they get there, the men are hungry, they're thirsty, but what they do is a bunch of the men, they go into the medicinal alcohol. So there's alcohol used for medicine reasons, okay? So like if you get a burn or a cut and you want to make sure that it stays healed, you put a little alcohol in it, make sure that there's no bacteria that gets in there and gets infected. Well, they're drinking the medicinal alcohol, which is, like 50 to 100% proof, which is going to get you drunk fast, especially if you don't have any food in your stomach. And they get super drunk. And then they accidentally light on fire a huge a cotton storehouse, which cotton's just going to go up like that, and it burns. 1/3 of the town of Columbia gets burned to the ground because of this. And then when the civilians ask, Sherman, why'd you do this? He goes, I didn't start the fire. You guys did when you shot your first shot at Fort Sumter. So he's like, booyah, you started this. This is what you get. Well, you might go, man, Sherman sounds like an all right guy. But you got to think here. He's attacking civilians. He is attacking civilians' livelihood. He's attacking the food that they eat, the places that they need to transport stuff. He's attacking the heart. Now, Lee actually keeps letters from his troops. So he's the guy on this Confederate side. He's thinking, I can't let my troops know what's going down in their hometowns. Why? Because if they find out that this guy Sherman is just wrecking the place, they're going to drop their guns and they're going to run down to save their family. So Lee is actually keeping letters from them because he doesn't want them to know what Sherman's doing. Anyway, Sherman's total war eventually strikes heart deep. You have a victory of Grant versus Lee. Lee and Grant meet at Appomattox Courthouse. They settle for terms of surrender, and that's pretty much the end of the war. No more Civil War. Biggest, most bloody war in history gets finally stopped. Sherman's a big part of that because it breaks the spirit of the South. And then finally Lee comes in, knocks down that final nail into the coffin when he signs the surrender at Appomattox to Grant. So that's it.